It is the unending, unaltering, unchanging policy of Britain and the United States to prop up every puppet president and corrupt king that rules the Muslim world, almost without exception, from one end to the other. They don't know whether to laugh or cry in the Muslim countries when they hear little Douglas Alexander, the mouse that roared, roaring at Robert Mugabe in the name of democracy, when Britain is propping up every tyrant in the Muslim world, giving them every weapon that they need, every diplomatic and political support that they can adduce. We could go through them all one by one. There's Pakistanis here. How long did they prop up the tyrant Musharraf? They stuffed his mouth with every weapon that he wanted. They filled his pockets with gold. They've given him a one-way ticket to the University of Honolulu, where he could sit under a palm tree and give his lectures as soon as he's no longer required. Hosni Mubarak, Lavash Kiri, the laughing cow, the 7 times President of Egypt, who gains 99.9% of the vote in every election. He's treated as a legitimate ruler by our governments. And we wonder why there might be some Egyptians who don't like us very much. I could go through them all. Gaddafi. His soldiers are now being trained at Sandhurst at your expense. His officers are being trained at your expense in Sandhurst. His security service is being, God help them, is being trained by our security service in London. At your expense. This is Gaddafi that they said had funded the IRA campaign, had brought down the airliner over Lockerbie. The same Gaddafi, they said, had killed an English policewoman on a London square. The same Gaddafi, they told us, was a madman and a terrorist, is now our best friend. Why? Did he change, or did he just change sides? Of course, everybody knows the answer to that. He just changed sides. I could go through them all. Saudi Arabia, which has $3 trillion in American banks, and another $3 trillion in the stock exchange, which is producing oil now selling at nearly $150 a barrel, and is using the surplus in the casinos and the bordellos and the weapons factories and the property markets of the West, to which they will one day, inshallah, soon flee. These tyrants, these dictators are never described as dictators. I'm sorry to go back to Mugabe. I've got no brief for Mugabe, but when I see this little mouse, Alexander, roaring at him, I wonder if it ever occurs to him that the British government is in bed with some of the most grisly, ugly, thieving, cutthroat criminals on the earth, and he wants us to take him seriously as he lectures Robert Mugabe. You see, that's where we are in the world. We're complicit in the tragedy of the Palestinian people. Indeed, we wrote it. Mr. Balfour, our foreign minister, in his declaration, promised on behalf of one people to a second people the land that belonged to a third people. Even by colonial standards, it was a remarkable gift to hand over somebody else's country to somebody else. We're utterly complicit, almost uniquely, in the Western occupation of Muslim lands. Who's left in the occupation of Iraq except us? Almost all the other countries, the coalition of the killing, have long ago changed their governments and left. In fact, look how bizarre the situation is. President Barack Obama, who will come to London, God willing, next January or February, considers the invasion of Iraq to be the biggest disaster America was ever involved in. And he's going to beat Prime Minister Gordon Brown, if Gordon's lucky. And Gordon's still insisting that the invasion of Iraq was a good thing. Did you ever think you'd live long enough where the American president would be an anti-war marcher and the British Labour Prime Minister would be a war criminal? Did you ever think you'd live long enough to see such a thing? Our occupation of Afghanistan, although heaven knows history is not the strong point of the British. If it was, they wouldn't be sending soldiers to Afghanistan. We've already left 3 armies dead in the hills and the plains of Afghanistan. Kipling wrote a whole canon of work about it. You know, nobody has ever successfully invaded and occupied Afghanistan. They're pretty good fighters, you know. And they have the benefit that they're not fighting for the poverty wages paid by the Ministry of Defence. They're fighting to defend their own country against foreign occupation. And all of history tells us that such an army, in the end, is unvanquishable, even if they are not battalions. But Afghanistan is going to be a graveyard for many thousands more young British, American, Canadian and other boys sent on a pack of lies on yet another foreign expedition. It won't succeed. Even Alexander the Great did not succeed in occupying Afghanistan, and Douglas Alexander is not Alexander the Great. I don't know what's got into me today. I can't get him out of my mind. And of course, we are utterly complicit in the propping up of these tyrants. The Somali puppet regime in Mogadishu are actually British passport holders. If you saw dispatches last week, it's almost unbelievable. The chief of police, the interior minister, the chief torturer and the president of Somalia are all British, with British passports and houses in Birmingham and London. They've been sent there to do the dirty work, and if things go wrong, as they will, I promise, they can all come back to London with a stipend. Some things never change. You know, Britain's imperial history is a grisly one. Oftentimes we hear ministers talking about Englishness and Britishness and all of that, and I'm reminded, coming as I do from an Irish background, of a time I came home from school and told my Irish grandfather, our teacher said Britain had an empire so vast that upon it the sun never set. And he answered, that's because God would never trust the British in the dark. This Union Jack, or as James Connolly called it, this butcher's apron, spattered with the blood of the occupied peoples of the empire, flies now, yes, now, in Afghanistan, in Iraq. But not for long. The problem is, we who have to live under that flag are the people endangered by the hatred generated by the policies of our government against which we stood and marched in the first place. So, I shall be saying on Wednesday, no ID card and no new clause in your anti-terror legislation is going to protect our country from the perils that lie in the future. What we need to do is do what the American people seem about to do, and that's to kick out the war leaders and elect someone who says at least that he wants a different road, a road that doesn't involve endless